Have you ever been in the presence of someone who seemed perfectly normal, polite, even charming, yet something inside you whispered, "Be careful"? That subtle tension, that almost invisible chill running down your spine, is not random. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, described this sensation as one of the most dangerous signs in a person. Not because they openly threaten you, but because the danger is hidden, masked by an image of normality. This is not a horror story. This is reality. And the most chilling truth is that many people who carry this sign are admired, respected, and even followed blindly. Their words may sound noble. Their gestures may appear kind. But deep inside there is a fracture, an unresolved shadow, that leaks through in ways your instincts pick up before your logic can explain. Jung believed this was one of the most important survival tools of the human soul, the ability to detect unconscious dangers before they surface in destructive acts. He called our attention to what he named the silent danger signal, something you cannot always see but can always feel. And if you ignore it, you may end up entangled in psychological games that rob you of your peace, your clarity, and sometimes even your destiny. From ancient times, religious stories, myths, and spiritual traditions have warned us about wolves in sheep's clothing, about the serpent hidden in paradise, about the smiling face that hides betrayal. Jung's genius was to show us, through psychology, why this happens. He revealed that when someone is disconnected from their inner world, their rejected parts, what he called the shadow, do not disappear. They wait. They project. They manipulate reality, often without the person even realizing it. And this is why Jung's insight is still vital today. Recognizing this hidden sign may be the very thing that protects your relationships, your career, and even your soul from being slowly poisoned by invisible dynamics. If you want to learn how to recognize these subtle but dangerous signs and protect yourself with wisdom, stay with me until the end. And before we go deeper, let me ask you, would you like to be part of a community that values truth, psychological awareness, and spiritual growth? Then take a second to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment saying, "I choose awareness." Because together we can build a safer, stronger, and more conscious world. Carl Jung taught that what we sense in these uneasy encounters is not imagination. It is the whisper of the unconscious, alerting us to something the eyes cannot yet see. Beneath the polished manners or the charming smile, there may be unresolved inner conflicts, repressed emotions, hidden motives, or fractured pieces of the soul. These fragments, buried deep in the unconscious, never truly vanish. Instead, they press against the surface, seeking expression. Often, they emerge not through words, but through the subtle energy a person carries into the room. Have you ever noticed someone whose presence feels heavier than their body, whose words seem right but whose aura feels wrong? This contradiction is precisely the kind of warning Jung was pointing to. And here lies the true danger, when the inner world and the outer appearance no longer match. A man may appear noble, yet be consumed by envy. A woman may seem endlessly kind, yet be driven by a thirst for control. A leader may speak of truth and justice, yet secretly hunger for domination. This dissonance, Jung warned, creates instability that spreads outward, pulling others into unconscious patterns they did not choose. Jung also observed that history itself is filled with these figures. Heroes who became tyrants. Preachers who became manipulators. Friends who became betrayers. The pattern repeats because most people are blind to it. They dismiss the subtle unease, convincing themselves that they are overreacting. But the unconscious is wiser than that. It is speaking. And ignoring it is one of the greatest mistakes we can make. Spiritual traditions echo the same warning. In Christianity, Jesus cautioned his disciples to discern the fruit of a person, not merely their words. In Buddhism, the concept of the black mirror shows how what is hidden in the soul of one person can be reflected onto another, distorting perception. Across cultures and centuries, the message remains: what is unseen is often more dangerous than what is visible. By listening to this inner voice, we are not judging others harshly, we are protecting ourselves wisely. And protection begins with awareness. Jung believed that one of the most dangerous psychological mechanisms behind this hidden sign is shadow projection. The shadow, in his view, is not some mystical darkness but the collection of all the traits we reject within ourselves, the anger we deny, the envy we suppress, the desires we are ashamed of, the motives we call unacceptable. Instead of vanishing, these energies live on in the unconscious, waiting for release. But rather than showing up in our own behavior, they often surface in how we perceive others. When a person cannot face their own shadow, they project it outward. They accuse others of being selfish, deceitful, or corrupt, not realizing that these accusations reflect their own unacknowledged tendencies. This is why, in some conversations, you may suddenly feel wrongly accused. Someone insists you are manipulative, arrogant, or dishonest, even though you know in your heart you are not acting that way. In such moments, you are not fighting their judgment of you, you are standing in the middle of their inner war. You have become the screen onto which they project their shadow. The frightening part is that the person projecting usually believes their perception is absolutely correct. To them, what they see in you is the undeniable truth. This conviction can persuade others as well, creating false stories, broken trust, and sometimes entire communities that side with the illusion. Jung's warning is clear. If you ignore these signs, you may end up trapped in someone else's unresolved battle. But if you recognize the projection for what it is, you can step back, refuse to carry their shadow, and protect your own soul. Ancient wisdom echoes this truth. Jesus spoke of the beam in one's own eye, before judging the speck in another. Buddhism warns of illusions reflected like dark mirrors. In both cases, the lesson is the same. What we reject within ourselves, we will see exaggerated in others. If you are finding this insight powerful, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, share this video, and leave a comment with the phrase, "I choose awareness over illusion." By doing this, you're not only supporting this work but also affirming your commitment to growth and truth. But Jung did not stop at shadow projection. He discovered an even more dangerous condition: psychic inflation. This occurs when a person's ego fuses with an archetype, an ancient image from the collective unconscious, such as the savior, the prophet, or the ultimate bearer of truth. At first glance, this might sound harmless. After all, isn't it good to want to help, to lead, to inspire? But Jung warned that when the ego fully identifies with these grand images, the result is not humility, but arrogance disguised as holiness. Unlike ordinary pride, psychic inflation carries a sacred mask. The person no longer says, "I think this is right." Instead, they speak as if their words come directly from truth itself. They are no longer just a teacher, they become the teacher. Not just a leader but the chosen one. Not just a voice but the voice of destiny. This is why Jung considered inflation more dangerous than vanity or arrogance. It convinces others because it wears the cloak of nobility. People naturally seek certainty, and so they are drawn to someone who radiates absolute conviction. The inflated person attracts followers, not because of genuine wisdom, but because of their unshakable confidence. History is filled with examples. Political leaders who believed they embodied the will of the nation. Religious figures who claimed to speak for God while exploiting their followers. Visionaries who started with noble ideals but became tyrants once their ego merged with the archetype of the savior. Jung observed that when this identification collapses, as it inevitably must, the fall is catastrophic. The person once seen as a vessel of light may plunge into destructive shadows, bringing devastation to themselves and those who trusted them. The danger is subtle. Light itself can become a veil. Traditions from Buddhism to Sufism warn that the illusion of purity is harder to break than the obvious pull of evil. When pride hides behind goodness, discernment becomes more urgent than ever. Closely related to psychic inflation is another trap Jung warned about: the persona. The persona is the social mask each of us wears to function in society. It is not inherently bad. It helps us adapt, play our roles, and maintain order. But the danger begins when a person becomes so identified with their mask that they forget their authentic self. At this stage, everything is calculated. The person knows exactly what to say, how to act, and which gestures will earn approval. They never reveal inner conflict or vulnerability. Outwardly, they seem flawless, always polite, always appropriate, always composed. But this perfection is lifeless. It lacks vitality. And for those who are sensitive, it produces an unexplainable discomfort, as though something real is missing. Jung observed that behind such masks lies a repressed shadow. All the anger, doubt, and raw humanity the persona denies does not disappear. It gathers in the unconscious like pressure behind a dam. When it finally breaks, the eruption is shocking, completely out of alignment with the polished image maintained for so long. This explains why public figures who seem untouchable sometimes collapse in scandal or destructive behaviors. The mask cracks and what was hidden floods into view. Spiritual traditions have long cautioned against clinging to appearances. The Taoist sages warned of virtue as display, a counterfeit morality that looks pure but is hollow. Christian mystics spoke of the dark night of the soul, when a carefully constructed pious image collapses under the weight of denied truth. The lesson is timeless. A mask may protect, but when it becomes the self, it imprisons. Modern neuroscience supports Jung's insights. Our brains are wired to detect micro-expressions and subtle mismatches. Even if someone's smile is perfect, if it does not align with their true emotions, we feel it. This explains the unease you may feel around someone who seems too perfect. The greatest danger of living only through the persona is that it separates a person from their true nature. And when the mask finally crumbles, both the individual and those around them often suffer the fallout. Jung also warned of another hidden danger: archetypal possession. Unlike the persona, which is a mask consciously worn, archetypal possession occurs when the unconscious completely takes over. In this state, a person no longer acts as an individual but as the embodiment of a larger, ancient force. Archetypes are universal patterns, such as the savior, the warrior, the victim, or the judge, that live deep within the collective unconscious. They are not inherently bad. When approached with awareness, they can inspire creativity, courage, and compassion. But when a person fully identifies with one archetype, they lose balance. Their humanity is swallowed, and they begin to act as if they are nothing but that role. You may have met someone who constantly plays the rescuer, always needing to save others, even when no rescue is needed. Or someone who becomes the eternal victim, forever trapped in the story of being wronged. Or the judge who condemns everyone without mercy. In these moments, the person is no longer themselves. They are speaking with the voice of the archetype that has seized them. Jung noted that this possession radiates a strange intensity. Their eyes may shine with unusual fire. Their words carry absolute certainty, as though spoken by something larger than themselves. To others, this can feel magnetic, even holy. But beneath the surface, the danger grows: the loss of self-reflection. Ancient traditions recognized this phenomenon. Shamans spoke of possession by spirits, distinguishing between controlled ritual experiences and dangerous states where the self was lost. Christianity called it the discernment of spirits, learning to separate true inspiration from destructive illusions. Sufi mystics warned that without grounding, spiritual experiences could turn into fanaticism. Modern science confirms that during such states, the brain areas responsible for self-awareness become less active, while transpersonal regions light up. This explains why the possessed person feels like a vessel of destiny. But the more they surrender to the archetype, the less freedom they have as an individual. The real danger lies in the charisma of conviction. Archetypal possession convinces others as much as it deceives the one possessed, spreading influence and often leading to destructive extremes. Among all the dangers Jung described, few are as tragic as the compulsion to repeat. This is the unconscious drive to recreate the same painful story again and again, even when the person desperately wants to escape it. Perhaps you know someone who always ends up betrayed in relationships, no matter how different the partners seem. Or someone who constantly finds themselves in jobs where they are undervalued, always ending with the same frustration. The details may change, but the plot is eerily familiar. Jung called this negative synchronicity, the uncanny way the unconscious arranges events to mirror inner wounds. The roots often lie in childhood traumas or unresolved emotional imprints. A child who felt abandoned may unconsciously seek situations where abandonment repeats, hoping to finally fix the story. But instead of healing, the cycle deepens. As psychoanalyst Christopher Ballas noted, these unprocessed memories become unthought knowns, patterns etched into the nervous system, silently shaping choices and perceptions. Spiritual traditions saw the same truth. In early Buddhism, karma was not originally about reward and punishment but about repetitive psychological patterns. In Christianity, the concept of original sin can be reinterpreted as inherited cycles of suffering passed from one generation to the next. Modern neuroscience adds clarity. Early traumas create neural pathways that become default settings. The brain expects repetition and unconsciously sets the stage for it. That is why the same storyline seems to follow certain people wherever they go. Recognizing this compulsion is crucial. Jung warned that unless the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you notice recurring patterns of betrayal, abandonment, or failure, it may not be the world against you but an unresolved shadow within you. Awareness is the first step to breaking free. If you want to dive deeper into these truths, and if you believe awareness can free you from cycles of pain, make sure to subscribe right now. And leave a comment below saying, "I choose freedom over repetition." Together we can spread this message so fewer lives are lost to unconscious cycles. Carl Jung did not leave us only with warnings, he also pointed to a path of transformation. At the heart of it is a process he called shadow integration. Unlike denial, which pushes darkness deeper, integration is about recognition, acceptance, and transformation. The shadow is not only our envy, anger, or selfishness. It also contains unexpressed gifts, our creativity, power, and passion that we were told to hide. Integrating the shadow does not mean excusing destructive behavior, but rather acknowledging that these parts exist within us. Jung's famous words capture it well: "I would rather be whole than good." True wholeness is different from moral perfection. It is the ability to hold light and dark together without pretending to be flawless. It is honesty about our limitations, humility about our strengths, and compassion for the struggles we see in others, because we recognize them in ourselves. Spiritual traditions describe this same truth. Tibetan Buddhism speaks of transforming poison into medicine, using difficult emotions as fuel for wisdom. Western alchemy portrays it as turning lead into gold, the heavy parts of the psyche becoming the raw material for inner transformation. Signs of shadow integration are unmistakable. These people are not defensive when confronted with their flaws. They admit their mistakes with clarity without collapsing into shame. They extend grace to others, not because they excuse harmful actions, but because they understand the complexity of being human. And above all, they avoid black and white thinking, living instead in the rich colors of reality. Modern neuroscience shows that this integration is not abstract. It changes the brain. When we accept fragmented parts of our experience, new neural connections form between emotional centers and higher reasoning. The result is greater resilience, less reactivity, and deeper compassion. Shadow integration is the turning point. It transforms danger into wisdom, projection into empathy, and repetition into freedom. It is the difference between being controlled by the unconscious and living with conscious strength. When Jung spoke about integrating the shadow, he was not offering a quick fix. He was describing a lifelong process. The unconscious is vast and no one can bring it fully into light. But the journey itself is transformative, because every step of awareness reduces the danger of being unconsciously ruled. The first step is honesty. Many people prefer to maintain an image of goodness, denying anything that threatens their persona. But Jung insisted that only by facing our darkness can we find balance. To pretend we have no shadow is to risk being consumed by it. The second step is reflection. Notice the qualities in others that trigger you most strongly. Do you despise arrogance? Do you feel irritated by selfishness? Often, the traits we condemn most fiercely in others are the very ones we secretly wrestle with ourselves. Jung advised us to use these reactions as mirrors, revealing what lies hidden within. The third step is compassion. This does not mean excusing harmful behavior, but recognizing that everyone carries inner battles. When we see our own shadow clearly, we become less quick to judge others. This humility creates healthier, more authentic relationships. Ancient traditions remind us of this truth. The Desert Fathers of early Christianity taught that confronting one's inner demons was the path to holiness. In Sufi poetry, Rumi spoke of embracing contradictions as doors to wisdom. And in Taoism, the yin-yang symbol reflects the inseparable unity of light and darkness. Modern psychology affirms the same principle. Therapists have found that patients who can openly acknowledge their flaws recover more quickly than those who cling to perfection. Resilience grows not from denying weakness but from integrating it. Jung's vision was simple yet radical: wholeness over perfection. To be whole is to carry both shadow and light without fear. To be whole is to live authentically, not as an image but as a human being. As Jung explored these themes, he noticed something profound. All the dangerous signs, shadow projection, psychic inflation, persona identification, archetypal possession, and the compulsion to repeat, share a common root. That root is disconnection from the unconscious. When we cut ourselves off from the parts of the psyche we fear, deny, or refuse to acknowledge, those parts do not disappear. Instead, they grow stronger in the dark. They seek expression through distortion, through the stories we project onto others, the masks we cling to, the archetypes that possess us, and the repetitive patterns that trap us. Jung compared this to ignoring a wounded animal. Left untreated, the wound festers and the creature grows dangerous. In the same way, neglected parts of the psyche become volatile forces. They demand attention, and if not integrated consciously, they erupt unconsciously, often harming both the individual and those around them. This is why Jung insisted that consciousness itself is the beginning of transformation. Awareness may not remove the shadow, but it gives us a choice. Instead of reacting blindly, we can pause. Instead of repeating the past, we can begin a new path. Many traditions echo this truth. The Bible says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The Buddha taught that awareness of suffering is the first step toward liberation. Across cultures, wisdom begins with seeing clearly. In modern times, this message is more urgent than ever. Social media, politics, and even religion often reward masks and projections. People chase perfect images, while their shadows grow in silence. The result is a culture full of charisma but lacking depth, full of noise but empty of authenticity. Jung's message cuts through. If we do not face our unconscious, it will rule us. But if we bring light into the hidden corners, we not only protect ourselves from danger, we also become a source of strength and clarity for others. Jung often reminded his students that the shadow is not only negative. It also contains the very qualities we need in order to live fully. Buried in the unconscious may be our courage, our creativity, or even our capacity for love. Traits we repressed because they felt unsafe in childhood or were judged by society. When someone begins the work of integration, these treasures emerge. The anger that once erupted destructively becomes the fire of determination. The envy that poisoned relationships becomes the fuel for personal growth. Even fear, when acknowledged, transforms into wisdom and careful discernment. Jung described this process as the alchemy of the soul. Just as ancient alchemists sought to turn base metals into gold, the psyche transforms leaden emotions into golden awareness. What once made us dangerous to ourselves and others can become the very source of healing and guidance. This is why Jung did not see the shadow as an enemy, but as an untapped ally. To fear it is to stay divided, to face it is to become whole. He warned, however, that this work requires patience and humility. It is not about forcing change overnight but about walking steadily toward greater honesty with oneself. Religious mystics across traditions echoed this wisdom. Saint Teresa of Avila spoke of dryness and inner struggle as necessary stages on the journey to union with God. The Zen masters of Japan taught that enlightenment is not the absence of contradictions but the embrace of them. The Sufis wrote of polishing the heart like a mirror, removing distortions until truth shines clearly. Modern psychology now confirms what these traditions knew. Those who integrate their shadow develop greater resilience, deeper empathy, and stronger authenticity. They are less likely to be manipulated by others, and less likely to unconsciously harm those they love. The path is not easy, but Jung believed it was the only way forward. To ignore the shadow is to live half a life. To embrace it is to begin the journey toward wholeness. When we look across all the signs Jung identified, projection, inflation, persona, possession, repetition, we see that they are not random. They are signals urging us to turn inward, to face what we have avoided. The shadow is not our enemy, our refusal to acknowledge it is. Jung emphasized that the journey of integration is not just personal but collective. When individuals awaken, society itself changes. Imagine families where parents no longer project their wounds onto their children. Imagine leaders who resist the seduction of archetypal possession. Imagine communities where honesty and humility matter more than image. Such change begins one person at a time, but its ripple effects can transform the whole. This is why awareness is so powerful. It is not merely self-help. It is the foundation of healthier relationships, stronger families, wiser leaders, and more compassionate societies. Jung believed that spreading psychological awareness was as important as any political or religious reform, because without it, unconscious forces would continue to dominate history. And here lies your invitation. If you have followed this journey so far, it means you value awareness. You want to live consciously, not blindly. You want to break cycles instead of repeating them. So take this step. Subscribe to this channel, share this message, and leave a comment below saying, "I choose to live awake." Every voice matters, and yours may be the encouragement someone else needs to begin their own journey. Remember, this is not just theory. Neuroscience shows that awareness rewires the brain. Spiritual traditions show that self-knowledge brings wisdom. And Jung shows that without facing the unconscious, no one is free. By choosing awareness today, you protect your future and create space for others to awaken too. This is more than a video. It is a call to build a community of conscious souls, walking together in truth. Jung's wisdom also reminds us that danger is never entirely outside of us. The same mechanisms we notice in others, projection, inflation, persona, possession, can also live quietly within our own psyche. It is easy to point out the shadow in someone else, but far harder to recognize when we ourselves are under its influence. This is why Jung spoke often of humility. To believe that I am fully awake is itself a dangerous illusion, a subtle form of psychic inflation. True awareness means admitting that blind spots always remain, that we are always capable of error, that the unconscious is vast beyond our comprehension. This humility is not weakness, it is protection. When we stay humble, we are less likely to be swept away by archetypes or to harm others through projection. We are more willing to question our own motives, to listen when others give feedback, and to pause when we feel absolute certainty rising within us. History shows the cost of ignoring this. Leaders who thought they were infallible destroyed nations. Parents who refused to see their own shadows wounded generations. Religious figures who believed they embodied pure truth fell into corruption. In every case, the refusal to look inward created destruction outward. By contrast, those who live with humility radiate a different kind of power. They do not need to dominate others. Their authority comes not from force but from authenticity. Their presence brings peace because it carries no hidden agenda. They embody what Jung called psychological maturity, the balance of shadow and light. Spiritual teachers across centuries echo this. The Apostle Paul wrote, "When I am weak, then I am strong." Laozi said, "He who knows he does not know is the highest." Rumi reminded us, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul." All point to the same truth. Maturity is not the absence of shadow but the wisdom to live with it honestly. As we approach the end of Jung's teaching on dangerous signs, one message shines through. Awareness is liberation. The unconscious is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a landscape to be explored. What makes a person dangerous is not their flaws themselves, but their refusal to recognize them. Think of it this way: a fire burning in the open can be tended, controlled, even used for warmth. But a fire hidden beneath the floorboards will one day erupt, consuming everything. The shadow is like that hidden fire. Acknowledged, it becomes energy for growth. Denied, it becomes destruction. Jung insisted that integration is not a luxury for the few but a responsibility for everyone. In our personal lives, it protects our relationships. In our communities, it prevents manipulation. In our societies, it guards against destructive leaders who cloak ambition in noble ideals. The choice is not whether we have a shadow, we all do. The choice is whether we face it with courage or hide from it until it bursts forth in ways we cannot control. Spiritual wisdom mirrors this. In Christian mysticism, St. John of the Cross spoke of the dark night of the soul as a sacred passage, not a curse. In Buddhism, the lotus flower grows only from the mud. In Sufi teaching, the heart must be broken before it can fully open to truth. Across traditions, the pattern is clear. Wholeness comes not by avoiding the shadow but by embracing it. Modern life gives us endless chances to practice this. Every irritation, every conflict, every strong reaction is an opportunity to ask, what part of me is being mirrored here? With this question, even daily struggles become steps on the path of integration. And in this way, Jung's wisdom is not only psychology, it is a guide for living consciously in a world that desperately needs more consciousness. So, what is the most dangerous sign in a person according to Carl Jung? It is not anger. It is not ambition. It is not even cruelty. The most dangerous sign is the refusal to face the unconscious, the denial of the shadow, the inflation of the ego, the mask of the persona, the possession by archetypes, and the endless repetition of old wounds. When these forces remain unseen, they shape lives in silence. They turn ordinary people into manipulators, visionaries into tyrants, and seekers of truth into prisoners of illusion. And yet, Jung did not leave us in despair. He gave us the tools to see, to listen, and to transform. The path he offered is not about becoming perfect but about becoming whole. It is about learning to pause when instincts whisper, to question our own certainties, to see the shadow as a teacher rather than an enemy. It is about living with enough humility to say, I, too, carry contradictions. And that is what makes me human. Awareness is not a shield that prevents all pain, but it is the light that keeps us from walking blindly into destruction. And each time you choose awareness, each time you notice a projection, question a mask, or break a cycle, you are building a safer world for yourself and for others. This is the legacy of Carl Jung, not only a map of the psyche but a call to awaken. To refuse unconsciousness is the most dangerous path. To embrace awareness is the most powerful choice. So, as you close this video, remember, the shadow will always be with you. But it does not have to rule you. Choose to face it. Choose to grow. Choose to live awake. Because in the end, the greatest danger is not in others. It is in forgetting who you truly are.